fives.
I know we do this every time. I wish there was a little. Like noise or something.
Like a count. Beep beep.
Usually
beep,
we have a couple
beep.
comments. Yeah. So
Right.
maybe is there anybody here in the comments in the chat? Hello.
Is anyone there?
Wait, what's
Hello,
that?
world.
What's that voice?
What was that? Who?
Spencer,
what
was that you?
No, it wasn't me. My voice is much lower than that. I have a lower voice than that.
It wasn't me. Is there somebody else in here?
I think there's someone else.
Is there
here.
someone in between? Wait, in between here and here?
Over here. We should pull this open. Really? 1, 2, 3.
Wait. Whoa!
Oh!
Oh my God! Tera Hatfield.
Hi, Tara.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're just hiding. Oh man, that's
It's
cool.
true.
We do have some people. We got Doug in here. Our boy Doug. Thanks for watching, Doug.
Thank you.
Todd is here. That's awesome.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Hi, team.
Yeah, here we are with another guest. Also, our 11th episode. Is that right?
And final.
Lucky number 11. All right.
Yeah,
Thank
maybe
you,
our
guys.
last. Who are you? Stranger lurking in the third column.
Who am I? My name is Tera Hatfield, and I had the pleasure of working as the design director at Torch with Paul, and also collaborating with Spencer often. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
I have a background in architecture and design, and I work in XR. I've been leading digital and emerging products for about 6 years.
Nice. Yeah, so we're going to dig into some of your past work probably pretty shortly because we don't have a whole lot of new stuff to talk about. If anybody has any topics, questions, or news, feel free to throw them in the chat because I got to be honest, it's been kind of I've been really busy. I started a new thing this week that I can't talk about yet, but I'm exhausted and I have been trying to keep up with all the news and I haven't really seen anything crazy except a couple things that we can talk about. So let me bring up the old browser here. So Spencer, I shared this with you in our Discord. By the way, we have a Discord server. Just go to chat.xrtalk.net and that'll get you right in. And then if you ever forget how to get to our YouTube channel, just go to watch.xrtalk.net and that'll take you to our channel. So we have this little announcement from Maxon, which is Cinema 4D, which is currently your 3D tool de jour, correct?
It is currently the tool that I use. I was super happy using Macs back when I had PCs, and then I switched over to Macintosh or to Apple, and of course 3D Studio Max does not run on Apple, and I tried using VMware and all sorts of stuff, and it was just like, oh god, it was just painful. So I switched over to Cinema 4D eventually because it's the most kind of Max-like. If I need to throw something together and then render it quickly for a client to show them what I'm talking about, because I do a lot of visual communication, I can do it in Cinema 4D way faster than I could do it in Maya. Maya is a great product for teams, I think, and for incredibly talented Maya artists. But I didn't want to spend all the time figuring out all the shaders and all the render settings and all the lighting settings and all that stuff. I can just make something in Cinema, hit render, and the couple things I can tweak, and then it works. It just works great.
Well,
so
I always thought
fast.
But you're saying you render out. Like, to me, I always thought of Cinema 4D. Honestly, Cinema 4D was not even on my radar until a couple of years ago because I always thought of it as a motion graphics tool first and foremost.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Right, and actually that goes right into Cineware, which is the connection between Cinema 4D and After Effects. And now Cineware is also is also the connection between Cinema 4D and Unity. So
that's this
Unity,
announcement.
And Paul, you got to think.
No, I was just saying. So that's what this announcement is, right? Is their plumbing into Unity through that Cineware
Right.
workflow.
And what's really cool about it is that you can get most of your, well, not all of them, but a lot of the animation materials, effects and shaders and stuff that you're building in Cinema 4D will come over to Unity. Now, I'm sure there is a long thing that don't come over, but it's a, you know, from what I can read, I haven't actually downloaded it and tried it in any of our projects, Paul. But and I won't. I'll do it on my own.
This press release came out March 9th. You should have already been like using this full time in production.
Okay, last time I just randomly brought in a new piece of software. I didn't stop hearing about it I still don't stop hearing about mega fires. You know, so I'd like to go slow and figure it out before I put it in there, so I don't freak out my program.
Man, you don't know how much it killed me to have to use a beta version of Unity for an AR project. I just don't like doing it. But so help me understand, like, so without this new Cineware connection between Cinema 4D and Unity, what is that changing? Like right now, is your workflow export to FBX and then FBX to Unity?
Right now the export, it's export to FBX and then go into Unity, pull all of the materials out of the FBX into a Unity folder, like duplicate them out of the FBX, modify the materials, reassign them to the geometry, and then now you have it. And that works, and it's not super painful. But you know, like today, I was going through one of our characters that we're working on for this AR project, and I was wondering why she looked so weird, and then I realized that she still had all the old materials on her. So there's this kind of like you have to keep it in your head. The pipeline is not seamless. So what I'm hoping for is that these materials will come across as designed in Cinema 4D, and will just show up in Unity with the correct PBR settings and all of that stuff, and you know, and correctly place the textures in the right spot and stuff like that. I haven't really dorked around with it enough.
And faster iteration too, right? Like
much faster iteration. If I don't have to sit there and re-massage each FBX as it gets exported and then imported in, then my iteration's way faster. I can have both Unity and Cinema up at the same time. I can hit save out, you know, or save as, you know, Cineware, and then just open it in Unity. So that's I'm hoping that that's what it is. I don't know if that's what it is, but I'm hoping. So yeah, it looks like a good thing. The other one more cool thing about it is that it doesn't require that everybody on the team who's going to touch that Unity project has a valid license of Cinema. So with Max and with Maya, they both require the programmer to have a valid copy of Maya or Max on their computer in order to open that Max or Maya file in Unity. And that was just a non-starter for small teams.
So just to explain that a little bit more, so like an art file, like a 3D model file with animations, textures, geometry, you work in a tool, usually multiple tools, but then examples of those tools are 3D Studio Max, Maya, and Cinema 4D,
and Blender.
Yes, we should not forget Blender. So in Unity, so normally like back in the old days of game dev, the artists would have to export out to some game engine ready binary, usually a custom thing. And then so there was always this art processing pipeline of like get it out of the artist tool and into the game engine. And one of
you'd run it through a crunch.
Yeah.
And it's like, did your stuff crunch?
Yeah. And then, so one of the cool things that Unity brought when they came out was this idea of, well, usually that's just a very mindless export and process step, and it doesn't usually require a whole lot of human intervention, ideally. So Unity has tended to go for, just give us the source file and we'll crunch it behind the scenes, right? So if you give it a PNG, like a real simple file format, most game engines don't just use straight up PNG. Like it's got to generate some other data around that for a game engine. So with a 3D model, back in the day, you could, so like what's the so like for Maya, it's a .maya file, right? Or .mb.
.ma or MB.
Yeah.
It's either binary or ASCII. Right.
And so that's like the source. Like you could open that up in Maya as a project, or if you drop it in Unity, it would automatically export behind the scenes and turn it into a 3D model. But in order to be able to do that automatic export, whoever's machine Unity is running on would need to have a licensed copy of that. So like on one hand, you'd have this really cool workflow where I just barely move a little piece of geometry in Maya, hit save, and Unity automatically just reprocesses and pulls it through. That's a cool workflow. But when you're working on a team or on a budget and you want everybody to have all these tools installed, it's kind of a pain. So that's another cool part of this is you get kind of an in between that workflow, right? You get like a more direct connection to the art tool, but they're not forcing everyone to have, like, just to bring it back to what you were saying, me as an engineer on a project, I don't need to have Cinema 4D installed if you choose to use this workflow.
Right,
which
exactly.
is cool.
And that is huge for small teams and for individuals and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think it's also really smart of them because it still requires that you have a full version of the newest version of Cinema 4D, which is not a cheap product.
Yeah.
So expensive.
You know, you get that. It is expensive, but you know what? I mean, it's totally worth it.
I mean, you spend how many hours per day in it?
Right? No, and I'm so surprised that it took C4D to have this. All of the designers that I know use C4D for the most part in terms of motion graphics and rendering. This is the go-to tool. So it seems crazy that this is new. I feel like it should have been around for a couple of years.
Yeah, and I'm glad it is now.
Speaking of that, so I thought it was a good segue because I know we have a lot of people that tune in because they're just trying to learn and like they want to figure out how to get how to express themselves in these new mediums. So I wanted to shout out to 3dfordesigners.com. It's run by Devin Co. So as far as I understand her back, Devin was a very prolific designer in kind of the 2D space, right? And she worked on some she was designer at, I want to say GitHub and a couple of other places. And
maybe at Adobe? Yeah.
Yeah, and she took it upon herself to teach herself 3D because she saw that, like, hey, I've got a lot of 2D skills, but I see the world moving to 3D like we all do. And so she has been doing this for a few years now as this course called 3D for Designers, and it's all about helping someone that's used to working in digital tools get up to speed in modeling and animating in 3D. And I think the more interesting part about it is she focuses on Cinema 4D, which we just spent a lot of time talking about. But you don't actually have to pay for Cinema 4D to use this course, right? And Tera, you've taken
in Light.
Yeah, and so a lot of people don't know, like, Cinema 4D has a version called Light, which is kind of bundled into
After Effects.
After Effects. Yeah. And so it's like Cinema 4D is actually inside of After Effects, but you can't. It doesn't feel like a separate app. It's like a part of it. And so that's her way of getting people up to speed on Cinema 4D without having to pay for the full. If you have a Creative Cloud subscription, you can actually you actually have a version of Cinema 4D Lite probably floating around. But Tera, when did you did this like a couple of years ago now or a year ago?
Yeah, I did this about 2 years ago, and I had I love that it's so sneaky that Adobe has this, C4D Lite. I never would have found it if I hadn't taken this class, but I had a background in architecture, so I was used to using Rhino, AutoCAD 3D, and C4D was. This class was fantastic because it immediately gets you in there and you're animating really quickly and you're doing stuff that looks beautiful. And also Devin Co has an amazing sense of humor and just makes
she's super energetic.
the tutorials
right?
really
So
quick.
much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's like you can always return to it. Basically, it has a forever life cycle, so you can watch the tutorials and do it as many times as you want. It's for life, which is nice for busy professionals who might start off and then ultimately get really busy and not be able to finish it. You can always come back.
And can I offer an addition to that, which is Andrew Kramer's site, videocopilot.net, for people who want to understand how to use After Effects in a good way. I'm not sure if you guys have checked him out, but Andrew Kramer is hilarious. It's what got me into his stuff was the same thing you were just saying, Tara, is that it's funny, and makes jokes and is eloquent and quick and fast with all of his, and they're all free. He's got a ton of free tutorials on that site. So videocopilot.net.
All right. Well, I'm gonna jump on the bandwagon and make a recommendation.
Dope.
So if 3D for Designers is a great way to get started into Cinema 4D for people that have, she assumes people have zero 3D experience. So like you really could get started with this. Spencer shared Video Copilot, which is great it looks like it's great for motion graphics and video editing. I'm going to shout out to Dilmer. So Dilmer is this guy, I've kind of watched him over the past year experiment on YouTube teaching Unity kind of courses. And he's now started this thing called Learn XR. And so like he does like his YouTube channel, he's got a Patreon and all that stuff. He will walk you through like all kinds of things for Unity. He's just got tons and tons of content. And he is now starting to tune towards XR, but he's actually he provides a bunch of samples and all this stuff. Quite honestly,
so what's he teach? Is he teaching like C# or is he teaching like?
Yeah, this is
JavaScript.
This is geared towards the Unity developer, I would say. So like everything's. I don't think anybody's doing I think everyone's doing .NET, C# and Unity these days. Like I don't know if too many people doing JavaScript anymore, even though it supports it. But Dilmer, he puts out very timely, relevant stuff. I have watched some of his videos to help me figure some stuff out. Like, and it's pretty awesome. He's built a little life for himself, putting out this really educational, interesting content. So it's kind of a nice little trio of things to check out.
Does Dilmer have like a community?
The links will be in the description.
That's correct. Thank you, Spencer. And by the way, while you're watching us, feel free to subscribe and hit the reminder, the notifications bell. It's somewhere
right down there.
I don't know.
Everyone point down there.
It's down here somewhere.
I didn't realize it was commercial time.
I've gone an hour and a half without ever mentioning that we are a subscribable ongoing thing. So when I see the opportunity, I throw it out there.
We're going to do it a lot in this episode.
Good. Well, it is funny because this is going to be weird to say because we've been doing this for now a couple months, but like since we've been in quarantine, I've really embraced the iPad and I've actually become a heavy YouTube user, which I wasn't really before. And it's really funny now. I'm watching like these really slick productions. They're like, be sure to like and subscribe and like follow our side channel. And I'm like, man, we just drink and talk garbage on Wednesday afternoons.
You just need to record a piece of dialogue and just like hit the button and it's like, okay.
Oh,
there.
But we do have this.
XR Talk with Paul and Spencer.
And Tara.
And is that Nick Lambert?
That's Nick Lambert. Yeah.
That was the Licknamber.
For the true hardcore loyal folks that follow our AV issues. Our guests can now hear our music and our audio, so I'm actually more inclined to play stuff like this.
XR Talk with Paul and Spencer.
Like and subscribe.
Oh wow! You know what you need? You need a sexy sax solo, I think, and I know just the person to provide that.
Oh yeah.
I had a quick question about Dilmer though before we move on. Just similar, if does he have classes that kind of like Dev and Co, where you actually get to speak to other people that are in your kind of cohort, where you're dropping things that you had made or questions, or is it really just like he's just posting to YouTube?
Yeah. So can everybody still hear us? I got a weird audio pop, and I want to make sure I didn't.
Nope, I can hear you.
Okay, because
you hear me?
Yeah.
Can our audience hear us?
Yeah, I've accidentally muted everything before. No. Yeah. So it is worth pointing out, Spencer. Maybe you can comment about Video Copilot, but for 3D for designers, it's self-guided, right? She's not live conducting the class. You kind of go through from lesson to lesson at your own pace. So far, I may be speaking out of turn because I haven't watched a ton of his stuff, but Dilmer usually kind of focuses on a topic and does a project, and then he'll share the code to the project. And then I don't think he's doing any live. I think Devin on 3D for Designers, she's not live teaching, but you do have direct access to her.
Yeah.
There's some two-way communication.
There's a DM channel of some kind.
Yeah, and for that class, during the duration of that class. So I don't know if Dilmer has a concept of a cohort or a class where you work together. Is Video Copilot kind of just tutorials, or?
Andrew is just tutorials. I mean, I think that he jumps into his discussions every once in a while, but as I can tell, it's just really good tutorials, and kind of with a little funniness about he's quite the showman. He's definitely
is he Cinema 4D only?
No, he's AE. He's
okay.
After Effects. It's all After Effects. So it's not Cinema 4D. There is some Cinema 4D in it, and he does talk about it, but his bread and butter is all After Effects. And he's the one who created the plug-in Form 3D that we used for the thing with Graham, the spaceship. What the heck was the name of that thing? Rocket Patrol. Right? Remember that?
Yeah.
So all of the 3D that I did back before I got into Cinema 4D, I did in not Form 3D, and Andrew Kramer's tool, which I've been forgetting now. So anyway, it's pretty cool. It's about $300. You can buy it, and it's amazing. Allows you to bring in OBJ files into After Effects and rotate them around and shade them and light them and render them out. It's pretty cool.
It's nice.
I just want Alexandra very helpfully mentioned that Dilmer does do DM for his course, so you can ask questions and stuff. And
nice.
But thanks for participating as a chat. We love the questions and comments. So happy to see so many familiar names, Eric and Estella. I feel like did you guys ever watch Romper Room? That old kids is a little.
Oh yes.
I see.
Yeah, I'm looking through the magic mirror, and I see Estella and Danny and Eric, and I see you, Alexandra. I see you, Cammie. Yeah. So let's see. We can shift our gears a little bit. Once again, I always think we never have anything to talk about, and then we turn it into 30 minutes of good chat. But that's cool. I didn't think about the fact that if you're on a budget and you tend to lean more towards the art side, and if you could get After Effects, then you could take advantage of 3D for Designers and Video Copilot and basically get yourself to a really interesting point where you can make your own 3D models, and then you can also produce these really cool demo videos.
Yeah.
Which kind of reminded me that
I should.
There's a
I
question.
should say what that is.
Because Eric had another question I did want to bring up because I think it's a good time. But first, Eric would like to know about the Cheeto butt behind you.
Nice. Someone got it.
Yeah, I love. Thank you. That was carefully framed. That is actually a protest poster by my good friend Jordan A. Smith. They're a designer at Google right now. It's basically Trump with a dead tweet coming out of the butt, basically. So enjoy.
Nice, thanks. And so Eric had another question that I felt like was relevant to what I wanted to transition to, because like Tera, I wanted to talk about your work history and what you're up to and everything. And if it's okay, I wanted to kind of share your portfolio site too. So I'm sure you're not going to complain.
Oh dear.
To our possibly 10, if not dozen viewers. There's a lot of exposure you're getting for free here.
Yeah, thank you. Wow,
yep,
this is like a portfolio review.
Yep. So TeraHatfield.com. She's got all kinds of cool work, and I think Spencer doesn't know a lot about some of this work. But before we get into that, because I do want to kind of talk about some of these projects specifically, Eric asked, like, when is it a good time to share what you're working on? He's paranoid about like getting his idea out there too early, or like that like somebody might take it. So like, I know, coming from the startup world, real quick, let me just shift back here. Like, coming from the startup world,
I have something to say about that too. When you
I'll let you guys speak to the creative part, because like in general, like the people have tons and tons of ideas, and people have tons and tons of half-baked projects or half-started projects. And really what separates all that from the pack is actually execution and sticking with it and getting something out there that you're ready to distribute widely. And so a lot of people do get afraid of like, I feel like I've got this good idea. I haven't heard anybody else doing it. Trust me, like just talking about your idea, first of all, will help you refine your idea to probably a better one, and you'll get a lot of good feedback. Just remember, all of us have tons and tons of ideas that we want to work on. So it's the likelihood that someone is extremely skilled and talented, but they don't have any ideas to work on, so they're just going to take yours, is, I would say, none. but so
very,
like,
very low.
That's my take on it, just from years and years of like having an idea I'm excited about that I think people could take easily. But go ahead. I'd love to hear you guys take on it.
Tera, go ahead. Take it.
Yeah. You know what? Someone once told me that, you own ideas for like maybe a couple of weeks and they kind of float to somebody else. And so I really believe in executing quickly. If you have something that you're excited about, do it, and then share it widely. Share it as early as you can, talk about it, continue iterating on it. And, the more that you have it out there, the more their ownership, if you're worried about that. I don't think you should be. But you're going to get great ideas just talking from people. And I think, it's very much like more brains are better than one, So like, just, don't be scared in terms of sharing your work widely. It's only going to improve the metal of your work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with all of that. And I would also say that if you have ideas and if you are prolific, then just shove it out there like a cannon, like a hose. Like just spew it out. Just keep throwing it out there.
There's a lot of noise out there too, anyway.
Yeah. And if you have a great idea, yeah, sure, someone might steal it. And then, they get to steal that one idea, but then you come up with 17 other ideas and you throw those out there, and maybe 2 of them get taken up by somebody and they take them, but you've got 15 other ideas that are still in your pipeline. And, don't get too possessive about your creativity, because, everyone has, like you guys said, everyone has great ideas, and it really is taking the idea in your head and just going with it. And I put half-baked shit out online all the time, because it's like, hey, this is kind of interesting, this idea, this thing. And I don't know what happens to them. I don't know if other people are inspired by them and they go and they do something else with it, or if they're like, that guy's crazy, and but yeah, just throw it out there, throw it on the wall, see if it sticks.
I would say it's harder and harder to actually take ideas and steal them. It seems like it would be easy with all the technology that we have, but TED Talks, slide shares. You Google something, and if it comes up with the original author, it's really easy to find that out. But I think we also have, even on TikTok, right, there's folks that are coming up with crazy dances, and you have other folks that are calling out other people that are like, that's not, you need to tag the person who created that dance, right? So we're really far afield from XR, but I think we have a generous community and a small enough community where if you have something out there and then someone takes it, people will get called out for that.
Well, the other part of it, like Tara and I have worked on a product that we sat back and watched Adobe and Apple make copies of. Like, I mean, not direct, but like not blatant, but definitely inspired by. And my attitude about that is always like, look, if somebody is copying what you're doing, they're only seeing what you've put out there. And like especially in a product, like the thing that is out there publicly for public viewing and consumption is so far behind what we're actively working on that it's like, cool, copy what I put out there, because I'm past that. Like you'll always be behind what I'm working on next, because you'll put something out there and you'll respond to the feedback or how it does, and you don't share that, and you keep iterating ahead. And so that's kind of a statement to people that copy too, like be inspired by others, but know that if you're copying someone else's idea, it's an old idea. Like if it that's another way to look at it.
If you look at that, if you look at it on like a timeline of creative branches, you'll see the idea that was put out there, and the person that took it, and then they start to branch off of that idea. But you've gone over here, and you're like, no, I thought about that. I'm not going to do it. I'm doing this one, and then you branch out, and by the time you get 3 or 4 generations out, they're completely different ideas.
That was with Torch. That's 100% true, because we took a lot of guesses because we didn't have anything to copy from, and we threw it out there public, and then we were like, oh, that now that we've put it out there, we're going to go in a different direction. But it takes a long time to go in a different direction. Meanwhile, like people assume you're going to keep iterating in that original direction, and a couple months later, it's like, surprise, we totally ditched that thing. So
right.
Yep.
Or this one part of this thing that we were working on gave us this idea for this thing that's completely unrelated.
Yeah.
Right.
That to me, it's less about getting stuff stolen and more about like, there's a lot of power in just sharing. It holds you accountable. You get so much good feedback. Yeah. Like there's way more to gain from sharing than not.
Yes. I would also just say, like, look at T.S. Eliot, right? Like, stole from the best, made his own poetry, right? Like, if you can take things and reshape them to make something new, like, that's all for the better, right? But it's really about being inspired and taking it in your own direction.
So I was going to go through some of Tara's work. and critique it without her being able to respond. No, I'm just kidding.
I'd love to see that. That'd actually be funny.
So let's see. I want to go ahead and get the chat, because the audience has been super engaged today, which is awesome. So we are going to talk about all the stuff Tara's doing right now, but I kind of wanted to take a step back. And so this website's live. It's terahatfield.com. And I wanted to share some of the things that kind of like you are a professional full-time product designer in XR, and a lot of people aspire to that, or a lot of people that watch us aspire to that type of career. So I think it's really interesting to see how the different paths we all travel. Like we kind of did this with Estella too. We talked about her kind of organic journey into getting into this new world. Because there's not a very mature career path into being an XR professional. So like I want to kind of I just want to mention the Royal Explorer Society. That was for your wedding, right?
It was.
Yeah.
I was my own client, which was fun. That was
so yeah,
not easy.
Yeah, and that's
you can
like,
also see my dog there.
Yeah, that's Bird. So that's like the like a lot of cool branding, but a lot of physical stuff. But I wanted to talk about some of your like earlier digital kind of work, like Needybot, which you are also the voice actor for.
I was, I think they needed a childlike voice, so that was my design direction. And then turned out I was the only female on the project, so boom, it was me. I think if you wanted to share some of that, it's at the bottom. But Needybot was basically born out of the idea of, we're joking around saying that, okay, robot overlords, right? They're gonna be taking our jobs, but if you know anything about AI and robotics right now, even just getting them to do the simplest tasks is incredibly hard and is time consuming. Like having a robot fold laundry, it fails quite a bit of the time. It can take hours as opposed to a human doing it in a couple of seconds. So the idea was like, what if, instead of a human having to, instead of us helping a robot, like what if the robot needed help basically in navigating? What if it was this completely sort of like lonely entity that was just sort of helpless in the way that a child might be at a young age? And so ultimately I was tasked with building this robot because it became a real project very quickly after we joked about it. And I thought we were going to have some actual resources and, cash money behind it. And it ended up, they wanted the robot to be made for free. So you can see some of the, it started out as a really slick molded plastic body, and then very quickly became polygonal and something that, okay, maybe we could 3D print this. And that's actually what we ended up doing was all, I think, on an Ultimaker. And it took like half a month to print.
And you cobbled together a bunch of off the shelf stuff too for the robot part, right?
Yeah. So we have like a turtle.
So you actually made this thing in reality?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We had it map every floor of the one in Kennedy office. Yeah. And what ended up happening was we had that hard plastic shell, and no one wanted to like go near it, and so. We were like, what's a really
in fur?
Exactly. It's like a dog. That again was just like, what are the resources that we have with $0? Okay, let's go to the fabric store and get something that feels like a wiry dog. And I probably had a lot of inspiration from my dog Bird, who is very much like an Irish Wolfhound meets Bird. But ultimately, it was the form factor was really about, okay, if someone has to carry this robot, how are they going to do it? And so we gave Needy basically earphones, which are the speakers, and then the headphones are actually the handle for folks to be able to pull them into the elevator or take them up the stairs, because he's actually asking people to, hey, can you help me get up to the 5th floor? I need to meet more people. His prime directive, or its mission, if you listen to...
Wait a minute. What year was this? Because I remembered this project.
Oh, really? Yeah, it was like 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
Well, it got open source too, right?
It did, yeah. So if you wanted to build your own Needybot, you could certainly do that.
Wasn't it?
But yeah,
it was like Needybot.
Needybot was really just about meeting people. That was the mission, was to meet as many people in the One Kennedy office as possible. So there were about 500 people in the office at that time, and Needy ended up meeting about half the folks. He definitely was the subject of some bullying by, studio, um, which you can see
So
with the KFC bucket.
This is the same.
Buckethead.
This is the same team responsible for KFC Crocs. Are the mean people that stuck a bucket of chicken on Needybot's face?
Well, and that brings up the idea of meaty bot. Maybe just cover him in meat.
Yeah.
Did anybody ever build one like a third party do the open source thing and build it?
You know what? I think so. I don't recall who it was, but it was, I believe it was a robotics school, like just basically a grad program.
Nice.
And then maybe something with MIT Media Lab. But yeah, it was really just sort of an experiment about how do we sort of like interact with robots and have them is it possible for humans to have empathy for robots? It's definitely pre-Westworld. But we basically thought, like,
right.
What if it's really shaggy? What if it has a really emotive eye? And, what if it had a very childlike voice that was basically just asking you for help? And it's all made out of super simple components that, anybody can make. But I have to give props to the other folks on the team, the engineering team, which is Dave Glyvar, who's also a Torch alumni, Max Foley, who is also running his own startup right now, Caravel, and also Nate Horseman. There's just like so many people that worked on this.
Keith Hamilton.
Because it was Keith. Oh yeah. Oh man. Keith actually was a huge part of the UI in terms of the eye. That emotive eye is really
for our listening audience. What's Keith's last name?
Hamilton.
Yeah. Also a Torch person. So I don't know if this is going to work because I've been experimenting with our audio video setup, but I'm going to try to play some Tera Hatfield voice acting, or sorry, Needybot voice acting. Which one do you recommend if we only had to pick two out of this list?
I would say Needy feels great and Needy sings.
Oh, that feels great.
Could you guys hear that?
Robots like people. Robots can help people. They don't need to take over the world. They're not all scanners. I just wanna go on the elevator.
That last one's actually a little creepy.
That's actually how I won the gig. They basically had everybody in the office in the lodge basically like, hey, record some stuff, say whatever you want, and then I sung that, and they were like, you're the voice.
Okay. Yeah, so if you're quarantined at home, happen to have a 3D printer, a Kinect, an iPad, and an Arduino, you could probably build yourself a little Needybot for the house.
Yeah.
There you go.
Tera, so let's try to bend it back towards the XR stuff. Like, what would you recommend? Like, maybe you did the Chrysler thing, and then there's the I definitely want to talk about the Nike by You stuff. So
yeah,
what do you think?
I mean, if you wanted to hit something earlier, you could do. This is actually my first VR project. Was the Chrysler 200.
This one, right?
If you wanted to, yeah. So this was actually early 2014. The Oculus SDK 2 had just come out, and I was maybe a week into my time at Wyden as a contract design lead. I ultimately ended up getting put on the Chrysler account, and I sold that first week this idea of using the SDK 2 to tell the story of the Chrysler 200, which was really about the factory that it was built in. That my team had been playing with, maybe a Google Maps style of exploration of the factory. And then ultimately it was just sort of like, what if, from my architecture background, I was like, what if the car exploded and the parts that we really want to talk about teleport you to the factory and you actually understand how the car was made piece by piece. And this was done in collaboration with Stop, which is a production shop down in LA in, Venice. But yeah, this was done pretty quickly. Yeah.
was going to mute it
I'm gonna show
And so
that.
it's,
if you want to talk
oh,
over.
go ahead.
I've got it muted if you want to talk over it a little bit. Or I
Okay.
can skip
Yeah.
around too.
You'll actually see a very young Tera Hatfield.
Oh, is this
talking
long
about,
hair, Tera?
Yeah.
I-
so
The first time I ever saw this, I was like, "Oh my god, I've never seen Tera with long hair."
like that's me. Oh, really? My hair.
Oh, it's still short.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just. Maybe it was just.
It is
It's longer than it
short.
was,
hmm
or longer than it is. There you are.
Oh dear. Yeah, that's me. And so, I just, like at the time, like I hadn't done any VR projects, but with the 3D background, I was able to tell a story, even though we didn't have Unity at that point in terms of, we weren't prototyping. I would basically express the idea through Photoshop and Adobe Creative Suite and After Effects. And, thankfully
how did you guys
they
build
they bought it.
if you weren't using Unity? How did you build?
No, well, yeah, to sell the concepts, like we weren't using Unity, and then obviously we built it.
So you did this all as like aspirational video kind of stuff.
Well, all of this is for real. I just mean when I sold the concept to Chrysler back in early
Right.
2014, it was basically like, here's what the story is, and did it through storyboarding and through like illustration and Photoshop of like what this will look like. Which,
And-
at the time I was lamenting tools, the lack of tools to be able to tell a story.
Right.
Man, if only somebody had worked on that. But the actual implementation, it seems like it was 360 video with hotspots, and so you'd teleport to the next 360 basically. Because was DK2 was 3DOF.
Yes, yeah, I think so.
Is that right? Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, we thought about using Leap. I think it was Leap.
Oh yeah, the leap motion for hands.
Right, being able to use your hands, and very quickly, we had decided to place people physically in the car, and we wanted someone who was in the passenger seat to also be able to experience this. And once you start moving your hands around within an enclosed space, like it's very problematic. So it basically was like, how can we have folks to be able to concentrate on a particular part of the car and select that? So like it's just using eye movement, which at the time was kind of the pattern that everyone is using, even sort of that early. And so it ends up highlighting the engine or whatever part that you're looking at, and then it has a little timer, and then it takes you to that 360 video. But that area where the car is exploded, and you actually feel that because there's thumpers. I'm trying to remember what the name of the actual.
Nice.
Oh, those
Right,
those sub pack woofer things.
Yeah, it was basically placed under the seat, and so you
So
felt
you could feel it as it was happening, right?
Yeah.
Well, and that's an interesting point too, is that a lot of people don't really think about how important audio is to these experiences.
Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately we didn't have access to spatial audio at the time, but having that extra sort of 4D element in the car really helped people sort of like get immersed. And it was about a 2-minute experience, and it ended up kind of going around all the car shows, South Korea, New York, Detroit, all that stuff.
Tell us about the Nike project. I don't think Spencer knows anything about this project, so I'm excited to hear him hear it.
This looks very sans serif.
Yeah, this is right up Spencer's alley.
Nike, they
with
they literally
tight
use
tracking.
Yeah.
The reason I say that is because I have built UI designs and stuff that Tera has picked up, and I have this style that is kind of just like what I do all the time for every frickin' project, and it's Helvetica Noi, and it's generally bold, and it's generally got really tight tracking, and I remember handing Tera off a project, and she completely changed it, and it works perfectly. And I was like, oh God, I need to learn how to like stretch my horizons a little bit, because
you just need to learn to collaborate with people that have talents
Well,
in the right
no.
areas.
Helvetica with tight tracking is just not for everyone. So
I didn't know the Nike font is
it
Futura.
Works.
Is it?
No,
is a variant?
The Nike font it's a sans serif. It's not Futura, but it's a particular type of.
I thought it was.
Futura
I thought it seemed more
correctly.
condensed than normal Futura.
It has a condensed version and then an expanded version. It's a true type font.
So tell us about this project.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is like a portfolio review. Okay.
No, I mean, like you don't have to. You don't have to tell us the because there's some
What
XR
did you
elements
like about
here.
this project? Yeah.
I love that I got to work embedded in a team with Nike with Mark Smith, who is a VP of design there and leads the Space Kitchen, which is an innovation lab. Basically, I got to leave Wyden and work at Nike in this super secret Beaverton, pop-up space that nobody, on the outside, it looks like a business mall. And then we were working on prototyping this experience physically and then also digitally within that space. And so we'd have folks like Tera Hatfield and just basically Nike high-ups come in and go through the experience. And we also had a VR experience that was sort of attached to this that's not in this particular post. But I love that we were solving a real problem. Nike ID, which is an online experience or had been for the last 10 years, was low engagement, lots of cart abandonment. And, Nike was looking for a new way to offer customization within the retail space. And so, we iterated for about 2 years. And ultimately, this project is about allowing basically a customer to design a Nike shoe while it's on their foot. So we use motion tracking and projection mapping to do that, and then also deliver the shoe within 60 minutes, because the real problem was people were designing shoes and then, via the online site, and then getting them in about 6 to 8 weeks and being like, this isn't what I designed. This isn't the color I chose. This isn't the material I chose. Not that it was wrong, but that it just wasn't meeting expectations. And so the ability to be able to design really quickly and then have that shoe that's your shoe that you customized in your hand in 60 minutes is just right. I didn't know if we could do it, but I was super excited that we actually succeeded. There were so many fantastic challenges, both in terms of the digital design, in terms of the interface that folks were using to be able to, customize, and then also the physical design challenges of what does the space look like and how does the production arm that works behind the scenes, how does that work? And how is it small? Because retail square footage is super expensive, right? Particularly for Nike stores. So how is this compact and how does this scale? There's just tons of great juicy problems.
I was going to say it's a meaty problem to get into. So we've got a Stella. You asked the same exact question I asked Tera very early on in meeting her. Is she related to the famous Nike designer Tera Hatfield? And,
yes, I can say that I am tangentially related to him. We both come from the Hatfield McCoys, so we have the same ancestor that said "fuck that shit." Sorry, and came out.
It's an adult show.
So yeah, our ancestor came out from West Virginia and settled in Mossy Rock, Washington, and then we have branches that go up into Washington and then also down into Portland. So tangentially, yes, we actually had a conversation about this, but I got asked that when I was in an interview with Wyden, and I basically said, I prefer not to talk about it, because I knew that if I said yes, that might actually help me. So I just kind of left it, wishy-washy.
Yeah. Well, and for people that don't know, we're all in Portland, Oregon. Nike is in a suburb of Portland called Beaverton. So Nike World headquarters, Adidas North American headquarters are right in the middle of the city. Under Armour headquarters is here. Columbia Apparel. We got a lot of really crazy stuff happening here in our little city. But the thing you kind of mentioned casually that I don't know if a lot of people picked up on is there is this legend around the fact that Nike has a lot of secret spaces sprinkled throughout Portland. Like they have their huge campus way far away. Well, not that far away, like a 20-minute drive from here. But they have like these. Like I've been to the Sin Bin, their skate park. It's like an indoor skate park in downtown Portland, and the building just looks like a nondescript brick building. And so you are working out of one of those secret spaces to build this first concept, right? Before it went on to like New York and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was actually very unattractive. It was basically about a half mile from a job that I had right out of college. So it was kind of like bad memories, but it was basically in a business mall park out in Beaverton, which for folks who aren't from here, it's very much the suburbs, lots of traffic, no sidewalks. Right.
Lots of tilt up.
Yeah.
Yes.
This, I was going to show this, the video that is that the New York location in the video?
This is the 45th location. This was like the VIP experience. So it was all about this like hush hush. This is where they kind of debuted all of their new, technology or retail experiences. And so we had a bunch of really, famous folks, I guess, if you will, go through this. But actually the gentleman in this video is a Wyden Kennedy employee, and he's very lovely. Forgetting his name, but he was on the video team.
So the user experiences, they put on blank white shoes, right? I think there's a shot here. And then
the Prestos.
Yeah, and then they stand in the middle of kind of this the stage. And then what's showing here is this projection mapping live onto the shoe. So I think that's coming up next. And then this is kind of showing.
How did they register the shoe?
So you can't really see it, but we had you can sort of see in that last shot. You have very small markers that are built onto all of the blanks, is what we call them. You wouldn't even catch them if you're just a casual observer. So they're just really small markers on the shoe, and then all of the projection technology is built into those little pods that are encasing that circle.
So then your machine vision to pick up those super tiny markers had to be super high res.
Yes. Yeah. And so like you had folks that were working behind the scenes monitoring, basically getting it to track perfectly in the real world is, like we're a little bit far away from that, but like we wanted to get it as close as possible to sell the concept. And we were actually able to map the shoe pretty well. Unless something got knocked. So if any of the projection stuff got,
uncalibrated,
like, yeah, exactly. The process was super fun. But we got it where, really any retail store employee could run the technology really quickly.
And this was a few years ago, right? Because we've been working together for at least 2 now. So.
Yeah, this was in 2017. Yeah, I left Wyden in June 2017, and it just finished and had come out at that point. It came out during Fashion Week, actually. So like I had wrapped all of my work on it, and then it came out in that fall.
And did you mention? Maybe you mentioned it and I missed it, but like, wasn't the other part of this like in that example where he's doing this experience? They were handing them their shoes like within 30 minutes of designing them, right? They were like making them on the fly.
Yep. Yeah. So I don't know if folks understood that, but like, there was a production arm that was 2 folks who were basically, once the shoe was designed, it was being made. Like the material was printed on a actual printer, right? And then it took about 45 minutes, I think. Or maybe it was like 35 was actually the quickest that. Sorry, my dog just came running down the stairs.
Hi, Bird.
35
Bird.
minutes was about the quickest. Yeah. Bird.
Hey, Bird. Oh, we miss Bird. Yeah, so it's kind of. I mean, it's what's funny is right there was this really beautiful experience space that people walk into. And it's all designed and dynamic, and it's doing all this projection mapping. But then there's these literal black curtains with people behind it. running the projection, making sure everything's still working, but also building the shoe.
Yes.
It's kind of Wizard of Oz. It's
Yeah.
like, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yes. Yeah, we spent a long time on the iPad tool. We looked at like how do we get away from screens? What if the UI is actually projected on the floor? And ultimately we found out through testing that, a tablet or a phone is just, people understand how to use it. And what happened during the VIP experience was you have folks just calling out colors or patterns, and then you had a proctor who was actually running the tool. But the idea is that in the future, what if it's you're using, voice recognition? Nike has actually expanded on this idea in a pretty, interesting way in terms of there's the AR app where you can look at shoes on your feet. And then also they've created another app where they can actually use basically computer vision to measure your feet to understand this, the Presto is a 9, but in this Nike Air Max, you're actually a 9.5. So they're continuing to sort of expand on that customization idea that, offers real utility, which I dig.
The concept of the proctor in between the client and the product is interesting, because that works really, really well. But how do you replace that proctor? Because that's a per person proctor, which is not something that is like, you can't scale that.
Yep.
So how do you get from like, this guy knows how the system works and knows how most people want their shoes and can offer good, advice.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that without that proctor there? Because you can't have a proctor per person, right?
Yeah, if you're expanding this out to all the Nike retail stores, it doesn't make sense to pay someone to do that.
Right.
We actually ended up coming up with 2 interfaces. One was for a proctor, so that it would be, it's very typical of an app where, okay, I've got all of the tabs, the navigation at the bottom, but we actually designed a second interface, and this was the first interface that we designed, which you can see a prototype of, and it's the ability to choose colors and patterns without actually having to look at the screen, and that was what we intended for folks to be able to use. So Nike ended up, wanting this to be a very VIP experience, and which is why they brought in proctors. But the original idea was, hey, you give the tool to, the person who's wanting to customize their shoe, and they're able to do it without actually looking at the screen. So it's literally just like you're swiping, or you're running your hand across colors, or you're, that ended up testing really well. But again, like with the VIP experience, I think if voice recognition was a little bit further along, we probably would have gone that way.
Right.
Yeah. So I think it's a valid question. And I think for this particular experience, they were like, okay, we're doing it during Fashion Week. We're going to have fancy folks coming through. Let's just have a proctor to make it really smooth.
Well, and I think that this comes back to AR in general, because I've been working with a client down in LA at a museum, and they are they're very interested in AR. They don't have a whole ton of experience about it, but they want to they want to utilize this to bring in more funding for the museum. And how do you design as a UX UI designer? How do you design an experience that can be picked up by anyone from grandma to teenager, and they understand what to do next? And this is something that Paul and I actually kind of struggled with when we were first at Magic Leap, was like what we were kind of like wrapping our heads around was, how do you deal with the world? Well, I'm going to pick up this puzzle right here. What do I do with this puzzle? Like I just picked it up. Okay, so that means my hand went and picked it up. Like there's physical analogies and analogs to the world that I think we need to start building into and continue to build into AR experiences, because how do you live? How do you interact with your world?
And I will. I know Tara's got a lot of thoughts on that. The only thing I wanted to real quick slip in there ahead of that was like, you know, AR, XR, even VR, which is a little bit further ahead. There's not a ton of what we would call UX patterns, like familiar patterns, and so like for a lot of digital experiences, like usually the operating system of the device you're using provides some sort of grounding for how do you interact with things? What does it look like? How do I know that's a text field versus a button? And that was one of the things with Torch that we had hoped was like more people that design these systems, these patterns, would be able to iterate on them by getting the tool out of the way. So like not having to learn Unity because I want to figure out what's the UX pattern for a menu floating in my room. And so
how do I do file, view, window, edit? You know,
yeah,
how do I do that?
But so many
in
people
VR or in AR.
We are so conditioned to be like, well, there must be a system, like a system of patterns available to me to use to build my thing. And for a lot of this stuff, you're starting from scratch. We're back in the DOS days. You know, like the windows are just now starting to appear, and a lot of people have different ideas about it. So I'll let Tara speak to more of the higher level part of that question. But like, I would say for people that are interested, like anybody that's watching this is obviously interested in this technology. And for me, that is what you just described is one of the most interesting, unsolved greenfield opportunities of this space. Is we need people brainstorming what is good user experience in these things, and sometimes we're going to make bad stuff because some stuff's just not going to work. But that's how you find the good stuff. But anyway, and then there's like the product version. Like Tera was like over the Torch product stuff. So like how do you get someone, like we're the first AR authoring tool running on your iPad. How do you get to the point of just handing that to someone and say, build something?
Yeah.
And can I just really quickly say that Torch R2 UI was freaking brilliant. And props.
Well,
amazing.
That's probably
so much better.
That's super relevant to probably what Tara's gonna say.
Yeah, no, particularly with that 4.0 build, that stuff was, was waiting for a good long while because we were trying so many different things because, again, this was a super new problem. That's really where I thrive. But, as a stepping stone, we really wanted to bring along 2D UI and UX patterns because that's where people were rooted in. Like mobile computing was what people understood. That's kind of the bar right now, which actually is really high because the experiences are really slick, like interactions, motion, visual design, everything is really polished because we've had like 10 or 15 years to be figuring this out. And what I'd say is that in the XR world, yes, it's early days, it's really nascent, but I think we're in the age of the website where we had the hyperlinks in magenta. We're still figuring out really, really rudimentary stuff. And so I would say that, like, at least with a Torch app, because it was on a tablet or an iPhone, there were really strong UX paradigms and patterns to be able to be pulling from for, UI that was stuck to the camera. Well, spatial UI, that's completely new as well. And I think a lot of people are pulling from gaming, which, makes sense. But, that's a relatively small community. And what I would say is that, with an architecture background, we've been building things as a species for, centuries, right? And there are clear patterns that we have developed. What is the comfortable height of a bench? What is the standard door, right? These are things that we just know, right? They're intuitive.
No, I'm gonna be innovative and make a 1 foot wide door because nobody's done it.
It happens.
Sorry.
I know that's a really large. No. I know that's a really large question, but I would say that the more that we can pull from the physical world, because that's where we live. That's like pulling a drawer out, right? Walking through a door, sitting on a bench. These are things that we just know. And the more that we can do that and leverage the technology to do that, the better we're going to be, off in terms of having things feel intuitive. I hate that word, but it's intuitive because we've been doing it for so long. Same with mobile computing, right? Like when we got those phones in the early 2000s, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't have responsive design, but we figured it out over time. And I feel like we will get there with XR, but it's going to take really diverse voices. It's going to take lots of really great people who aren't from the same background to be figuring out and tackling these problems, which is why I was super stoked on Torch, because it was about democratizing the technology and allowing people who didn't know Unity, didn't want to learn Unity, or just were really scared of the steep learning curve, and just be able to just dive in and make things.
What's trippy for me is that what you're describing is something that I've never really thought about. As far as like I'm kind of self-focused as a 3D artist. I've always been a game artist, and so I came into XR, AR, VR with this no, we need to make this a real-time 3D thing, and so I fought a lot with VFX people who would come in with their million polygon models and and crazy shaders and stuff, and it's like no, that's not going to run on but you're doing the same thing. You are in this space where you're trying to design something that is an analog, and at least first an analog, and then an increase in the UX that we have already on our phones. And what we have already on our phones is much. It's say it's much more simple. It is. It's more simple because there's been we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Because everyone else has figured out the problem, so we just go look up the reactive screen sizes like we were talking about earlier. And we have tools to figure out how to make a beautiful design on 2D. There are no tools to make a beautiful design in 3D or in AR or in XR. I mean, I'm sure there are some, and of course,
but they're hard.
One of them, but they're freaking hard, right? So, so I never thought about again, self-focused. I never thought about the fact that UI designers are also bumping up against the same kind of, it looks beautiful in 2D. Why can't it look beautiful in 3D? And it's like you have the same problem.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what people, just like common folks are thinking. It's like, I'm used to this experience on my mobile phone or my desktop, and then now I'm looking at this it's supposed to be super futuristic and like the most amazing new, technology.
I just watched Iron Man.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not that.
Yeah.
Not that yet.
Right. It'll probably never be that.
No. Yeah. Exactly. There's reasons.
So you kind of bounced off of Todd's question, which I threw up earlier, which was like, your architecture background, which we didn't really talk a ton about. And then the other, I'm going to go ahead and I want to, before it gets too late, I want to definitely plug your book because.
What? She's an author too?
Well,
who is this woman?
So real quick, tell us about Seattleness, the book, but then I'm going to bring it back to Todd's question, I think.
So this was something I did on the side with two architecture friends. It's basically a cultural atlas using data visualization to tell the story of the city of Seattle, both from a geological, geographical, historical, cultural sort of standpoints. All three of the authors were white women, so we tried to make it very expansive. But we do note in the foreword that, this is one viewpoint. And also as an architect, knowing that cities cities are organisms. They're changing, so particularly now, as we have cities that are growing really quickly, a lot of those changes that were only seen over a couple of generations are now being seen every 10 years. So, for example, Seattle, I grew up there. It completely changed in the 90s, then it completely changed in the aughts, and now it's a completely different city. And, wanting to honor all of the people that had actually lived there and those experiences, being able to show that change over time was something that we were really concerned about, but doing that visually. So it's basically a coffee table book for folks who are new to Seattle or are from Seattle, or that, aren't from Seattle, but, love the Pacific Northwest.
Like people in Portland.
Yeah. It's an ode to the city. It's my ode.
Yeah, and it's like, it's data viz. Like, the one thing I always love pointing out is the cover of the book. If you just glance at the cover of the book, it has this pattern on it. But this pattern is actually a data visualization, right? This is rainfall.
Yeah. Yeah, this is something that I had always wanted to do, having lived in Bremerton, and also just, I think folks always thinks it rains there, but it's actually just really gray. And I think a lot of people are like, well, that's the same color, right? But I think people who live there kind of come to really respect and admire and sort of notice the differences in the colors of the sky, even though it's gray a lot of the time, except for, in the summer when it's the magic hour and people come there and they're like, oh, I want to move here, until, fall hits, and then it's really sad. But ultimately,
so tell us Paul, can you go back up to it? Tell us what that is.
So so basically these are, the Space Needle offers 360-degree high-resolution photos. They take it every day at noon, and ultimately we took that data. It wasn't necessarily free, but it was on the internet, so we borrowed it, and ultimately cut out the sky with a scripting tool, and then broke that down month by month, and then also broke it down into percentages. So what you're seeing is actually the color of the sky over the course of a year, and broken down into percentages of, okay, it was gray for 60% of the time. It was blue.
So these are 360s that are going vertically instead of horizontally.
Yeah, and so what you can see is that obviously in the summer months it's much more blue, and then ultimately you get all these differentiations of gray that are really nuanced, but that are really actually quite beautiful. Yeah. So it's basically really cool. It's a data visualization of the color of the sky over the course of a year.
I love that.
And it's a beautiful book. And if you love, if you're a Tufty fan, if you like data viz, if you like just good design, just get the book. If you're not supporting Amazon right now, Stella just mentioned that, I think you could order it from Powell's in Portland online, or do you have any other recommendations, Tera?
Yeah, Powell's is independent. Yeah, you can get it from any.
Powell's just rehired 100 people, because they've been getting a massive amount of online book sales. So.
Yeah, they're incredibly dope. Really kind of any indie will have it, but I would say that Powell's is probably the largest independent store that you're going to be able to find, unless you're in Seattle, and then you can go to Elliott Bay Bookstore or Third Place Books.
So I wanted we did a little side trip to Seattle-ness, because I wanted to point out just how multidisciplinary Tera is. I mean, this isn't just designing digital interfaces. It's doing illustration work. It's doing design work. It's doing physical spaces. And so Todd had asked, and I'm going to kind of build upon that, which is in the XR space, how much of your background comes from architecture? You've got this physical industrial design side. You've got this digital design side. When do you pull from those backgrounds? And then I think Estella also asked do you have a framework or golden rules for designing for spatial stuff? So can you kind of bundle all that up into a thought?
Yes, I can make that happen.
27 words or less.
Yeah. Can you make it tweetable?
Give me a moment. Okay.
No, we can also break it up into two. Just what you have that was one of the reasons why I wanted to work with you, right? I knew you had this crazy background between architecture and design and what I would just call digital. And I knew little pieces of that would be useful, but have you found one in particular, like what have you found having all those backgrounds being the most useful?
Yeah, I mean, I really do think it's a combination of. So I was an English major, which shout out to all the English majors, which is actually like not majoring in anything. It's it's the anti-choice basically. I think the ability to absorb stories and tell them is one part, right? Which isn't really design, but it's a way of thinking and seeing the world and absorbing information. And then obviously architecture. I think a lot of folks just think of it as building buildings, and the way that I approached it, right, was it's a form of interaction design in the real world with really, really juicy problems that can be seen at a variety of scales. So, Aller Alto designed these beautiful, beautiful doorknobs, and he had this just really lovely detail at this small scale. But then he also designed these huge university campuses and landscapes. Like he did, from an architectural standpoint, he was really interdisciplinary. He did furniture, he did landscapes, he did buildings. He really focused on the public realm. And I think that ability to be able to telescope between the like nuanced detail all the way to that really holistic plan view is really important. So you can see the forest and you can see the trees, and when you need to see which was something that I think in architecture was really invaluable. I would also say,
good Lord, how do you do that?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you think about trying to design like,
Right?
Olmsted, like Central Park, right? Or the Emerald Jewel in Boston. These are
that's an insane ability. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's great.
And it's also happening in a landscape that's already built up, right? Like New York wasn't nothing when Olmsted came in, but like it has to react and be in conversation with its surrounding and its context. And I think that's another key point is what is the context? I think a lot of architects and a lot of designers dive into the problem without actually thinking about cultural nuance. Where and when and why is this happening? I mean, those are really simple questions to ask, but I think a lot of designers kind of zoom right past it because it's really exciting to, I have an idea and I want to test it out, and that's fine. But I think you always have to come back as your touchstone. Why am I doing this? When is this happening? How is it interacting with basically other components that are a part of this problem or this interaction or this physical setting? And I think, we were talking about responsive design in websites earlier with Spencer, and a problem that we started to broach, and Keith Hamilton really sort of led this charge is, how do you have responsive design in XR? So how do we respond to where a user is standing, or are they sitting? Are they in a wheelchair? These are things that are really important and are kind of a given in mobile computing. But we have only scratched the surface in terms of how we handle that in XR. I think in Torch we handled it really elegantly, but that's a huge problem. And I think in terms of having accessible technology, we're going to need to really sort of like turn the screw on that problem much more. I'm trying to think of the second part of this question, which was...
I think Estella was kind of wanting to know, like, do you have any kind of framework or golden rules, I think is what she said, around thinking about designing an immersive experience or a spatial experience?
Yeah. Thank you. I think it goes back to sort of what I was saying is making sure you understand the context of where is this living? Who is it interacting with? What is it interacting with? Making sure that you really consider those problems, and also maybe understanding that ultimately you might not know, you might not have that information, and so how do you make that experience really thrive in a universal design sort of ecosystem? So the idea of making sure if you design for, this larger segment, or sorry, smaller segment, if you think of like the worst case scenario, how does that work for everybody? If it works for that one person, it's actually going to work for everyone. So I think that's like the universal, forget if it's the universal design system. Tim Allen actually spoke about it. He's from Microsoft. I think he's like the VP of design there, but I think he's a pretty interesting person to follow. If you Google him, I'm sure you'll find him. He's not obviously the home improvement character.
Different Tim Allen, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. I know that was a rambling answer.
No, it's good. I think
no.
like the thing I heard this a couple years ago, like the function of a designer is to make decisions, right? Like you're editing, you're starting with a raw lump of clay, and you're making the decisions that craft the experience for the target person. And so like, yeah, like, kind of like Spencer's example earlier where you say, well, I just want everybody, I want any person to be able to walk up to this thing and intuitive, like, and know how to use it. And it's like, well, okay, sure. Who wouldn't want that? But the truth is people are different, and not everybody is coming up to you with the same background or perspective or biases or expectations. And so there's kind of these twofold that one is understanding who do you want to use your thing. And like there's always going to be criteria to filter that out. Like even like in the door handle example, right? It's like, well, it's for people trying to enter this building or trying to leave this room, and they probably have at least one hand. And like, like and thinking through, like building yourself up a set of constraints to make those decisions against. Otherwise, you're just like, well, all people will just know how this works when they see it, and that's always the goal.
I got to say that there is no intuitive understanding of any kind of control mechanism in our world, right? When you're a little kid, you don't know how to open a door. When you have to be taught how to open a door. Mm-hmm. You have to understand how these things work. And yes, we are adults who are using AR, and so we know how to open a door, so we can use that if we want to use that familiar thing. Like it's this is a very difficult problem because of the fact that we're in a new space where there are new ways of interacting which don't actually happen in the real world. My phone's about to go out. Wow. Okay. This is the first time for that.
Tara's running south. We're almost an hour and a half in.
Sorry about that.
Anyway, I wanted to say this is not an easy problem. This is a very difficult problem.
I completely agree. And I would say, oh, shoot, you said something that I was just like, yes. Shoot, it's so
like as kids, we don't know how to use a door.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. This word intuitive, I think Keith Hamilton would also jump right on this, would be like, what's intuitive? It means that I've learned how to do it over time,
Exactly.
Like nothing is ever like, immediately grokked it. Really, it's about learning. And I think in that way, it can feel intuitive, but actually it's really just pulling from previous resources that you're hyper familiar with. I would also say in terms of like
how do you use this?
Yes.
How do you use this? I learned
I'll tell you how to use that, Spencer.
Well, I actually am using it right now. But like I learned how to use this when I was a waiter in Pacific Grove. And it took me probably a month and a half to like really kind of like slickly pull it out and like do the bottle and all that stuff. Like this is a learning skill.
That's not how I was going to tell you how to use it, but go ahead.
Stop it.
I would say that like a golden rule, right? I mean, this is super simple, but just like ask questions. That's the job of the designer, is to ask as many questions as you can and continue asking them of yourself and other people on your team, and also of people that you're iteratively testing with, right? Like, hopefully you're not doing this in a vacuum.
Right. I'll tell you, the coolest people I've ever worked with say they don't know. Like, like, oh, wow, I have no idea. Like, how do we do that? Let's figure it out.
There's no shame in that.
Folks, no, none whatsoever. In fact, that's an amazing skill to be able to say, shit, I don't know. Let's figure it out.
Yeah. I would also say that Estelle has a really great point. Intuition also relates to sort of different cultures, and so a part of those asking questions is, where am I? Who is this for? Because products live across different countries, and you need to be thinking about, is there something that needs to change, even if slightly, about this? And you also need to think about how you're presenting and giving instructions, right?
Just to throw another layer of complexity on your UI tasks.
Yeah.
By the way, for folks that like this conversation, if you haven't read Design of Everyday Things, this is like you would like that book. So while you're ordering Seattleness, got the plug in there. Also get yourself a copy of Design of Everyday Things and read that one.
I haven't read that yet. That's next.
I think we all got a lot of reading time right now.
You know what? I'm gonna post all of my design books on Instagram stories. So if anybody wants to, it's a whole breadth of digital design, industrial design, and architectural design.
Nice. So that _field on Instagram and Twitter and everything else. Thank you so much. This is awesome. Man, we covered so much. We talked about all kinds of stuff. It was great.
People were taking notes.
3D for designers and video co-pilot.
This is a solid fire hose episode.
Yeah. So if you like this conversation, we do this every week. So please go ahead and just like and subscribe. We have a little community building in the Discord chat. Actually, Tera, if you want to... Tera jumped into the Discord earlier today. If you want to share your book list there too, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely.
Tera is a free agent right now, available for projects or potentially working with folks. So go to terahatfield.com and see her past work. Share it around.
We are pimping her ride.
Yep.
We didn't actually talk about the opportunities that are available out in XR. That's maybe another.
That's
right. Yeah. I think we should. Yeah, I think
I'll
this is a good.
drop it in the Discord.
Yeah. Let's carry the conversation that way. So Tera's been out for, I don't know, probably a month, talking to a bunch of different companies and getting a lay of the land, and kind of if you are looking for a career in this space. We all help each other out, and this stuff's moving so quickly. So it's really interesting to hear somebody that's actively going out there looking for a little bit more senior level position, to hear what companies are doing cool stuff. What companies are some companies may not have anything out publicly yet, but they're hiring. And so, and then there's things like portfolios and presentation. And Tera, I'm so sorry we put you on the spot with a portfolio review. That was not my intent. But I did want to show some of your cool work off. I'm just so proud of everything you do. Thank you so much. I got
so many ideas from that I'm going to steal.
Inspiration. You inspire.
Get out there.
Yeah. What do you want to do for your frame? Did you think about what you want to do for your snapshot for the video?
Yeah, let's do the hear no evil, see no evil.
Oh, right. So
right?
If we go in order, I'm hear no evil if we go in order, and then you're see and Spencer's here. No, wait. Spencer's speak. Yes, Spencer, cover your mouth. It's my dream come true.
That's the whole idea.
Okay. Thanks so much. Thanks everybody for the chat, man. You guys really came through. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We'll keep talking on Discord.
All these people in person.
Yeah. Wait, Cammy, real quick, Cammy, do you have a new episode coming out this week or maybe next week?
Oh, by the way, yeah. If you haven't seen Cammy's YouTube, you need to. It's amazing.
Yeah. Yes. So Cammy, who was on last week, announced her new series on YouTube. It came out the same night. The first episode came out the same night. But
So
I didn't know. Is there a new episode coming out? I don't want to put her on the spot. I think there's a little bit of lag too in the chat.
Yeah, I think so. It's so thoughtful and just really hilarious at the same time. Like,
Yes.
I was incredibly surprised how deep and
Right?
complex concepts that Cammy goes into and
I know.
provides
She
real
started off-
insight and humor.
Yeah.
It's so good.
She started off kind of like, oh, ha, 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 you know, and then all of a sudden, like, these super deep, cool thoughts and ideas. I'm like, whoa, what's going on next, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Very watchable.
So
Absolutely.
Cammy says yes. There's a new episode. It's going to be an overview of Torch. So make sure, since you're on YouTube already, you might as well go ahead and search for Cammy's Reality, and go ahead and subscribe to that one too. See, we're building a
She's
whole little
gonna
XR
grill
network.
Paul.
It's a
Yeah,
whole little XR network in Portland. People just don't even know. All right. Thanks so much. This has been a ton of time that you all have given us, both as an audience and Tara as a guest. Spencer doesn't have anything to do anyway, so he's just hanging out anyway. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna.
I just I tell it.
I'm
This
not.
is what I do.
I'm not gonna
This-
thank him.
Every Wednesday. That's it.
I'm gonna sign off with some music by Nick Lambert because I can do that now. So.
XR Talk with Paul and Spencer.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.